Morning, all. All right, so preview a news video for today. Uh, of course, because we're still in the playoffs, the news isn't picking up the way that it normally does in May and June because the playoffs are, of course, later. We'll start seeing trades and moves being made once we get past the playoffs, or maybe once we get to the semifinals and the final. So tonight ends the first round in the North, and there's going to be 550 healthcare workers in the building in Toronto. Write your own jokes here, but that seems to have been standard. We saw that in the U.S. as well. A lot of buildings, when they opened up to healthcare workers initially, and then they started allowing general population in. So on the Canadian side, it's slower on the uptake, but that's what we're going to see in Toronto, and then we'll see. I know that the Winnipeg Jets are talking to the Manitoba government about something similar in Manitoba. So we'll see if we get that, and of course the Canadian government talking to the NHL about how the cross-border thing might work in the semifinals and all of that. But yeah, Toronto and Montreal, and I'm wearing a Toronto jersey. I'll tell you why. So this is Game 7, and going into this series, about 75-80% of the vote was towards Toronto winning the series, right? So Toronto gets up 3-1, and there's a lot of, yay, we're going to make this easy, and Montreal can't compete, and blah, blah, blah. Well, now it's a Game 7, and now it's just switched. I've seen polls online showing as many as like 70% of people expecting Montreal to win tonight. I just want to see Toronto win around. I do. I've been saying this for the last couple of years. I even said it the last time they played Boston. I was like, man, I'm starting to feel bad for the players on some level. I know, it's on them to win the game, but the amount of pressure on them, it's just, anyways, it would be nice to see them win around and move on to the next round and play Winnipeg. And yeah, so that's what I'm hoping happens on some level, because while I just enjoy the hockey and I don't really care who wins, it'd be nice to see Toronto at least advance the narrative beyond they can't get out of the first round. Then people just say, well, they only won because they're against Montreal and not Boston in the first round, which is okay. But yeah, so we'll see what happens tonight, but hopefully Toronto finally flips that narrative. They won't have John Tavares. I know he was out skating around. People got all excited. He's not playing. There was no chance he was going to be playing. But it's still nice to see him out there skating, and it means that we may see him in the next round. So the Leafs, again, if they win tonight, they have a much better chance of seeing him play, because if they don't win tonight, they'll have to go out and play golf with them, because there won't be a hockey game for them until October. Jake Muzzin's out 3 weeks. So the bad news of that is not just that you have Jake Muzzin out for Game 7, but if you find your way to win Game 7, and Sandin goes in the lineup for him, if you win this Game 7, then you don't have Muzzin for the entire series against Winnipeg. And Muzzin's the kind of defenseman that you need against Winnipeg. The Jets are going to be very well rested, and as we saw last night in the Colorado-Vegas game, sometimes that well-rested team, if they're still focused after all that rest, which can be an issue, rust can be a problem. But yeah, Toronto may have some serious issues trying to knock off Winnipeg, especially if, and I would think the NHL does, put in back-to-back games again in the next round. Yeah, not having Muzzin is huge. So we'll see what happens. All the best to the healthcare workers that are in that building tonight. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, Boston, Game 2 in Boston. And this should be interesting. Wallstrom's still out for the Islanders, so I'm guessing Zajak's in. It looks like Varlamov is going to start for the Islanders tonight. So, and that's not necessarily surprising. Barry Trotz, known for his goalie rotation with the Islanders, never shy about switching goaltenders. No reason to worry about it here either. Varlamov's an excellent playoff goaltender. His numbers this year not as good, but he's an excellent playoff goaltender. So I would expect pretty good game out of him. Probably a pretty good game out of the Bruins as well. And for the Bruins, there's no Craig Smith, so DeBrusk moves up to the second line. Carson Kuhlman draws in. The Bruins do have depth, as long as they don't have any more injuries on the blue line. Any more injuries on the blue line, that's where I get concerned. But yeah, so things are holding up pretty well for Boston. They're trying to go up 2-0. For the Islanders, if they win tonight, all they have to do is hold serve at home, win those games in Game 3 and 4, in pretty good shape. All right, moving on from tonight's action. Kirill Kaprizov apparently has been offered by the Minnesota Wild in excess of $64 million for 8 years. That's not too bad. That's some good money. That's he doesn't take it, I will. Like I'm okay with 64 million over 8 years. I mean, it would be better if it was over 4, but I think I could, move some funds around and move some stuff. I think I could make that work. So we'll see whether or not Kaprizov wants to sign a long-term contract or if he'd rather sign a short-term contract. Because 8 years, that'll take him into his early 30s. So that's basically saying he will be with Minnesota through his best years, which understandable why Bill Guerin would want to lock him down because Kaprizov is that good. He has been absolutely fantastic, and what a rookie season he had. And I would expect even more out of him next year. An 82-game schedule, he could score 100 points next year. It's possible. It's there. So we'll see whether or not he takes that a lot of money from Minnesota or not. But I would suspect that at a time where there's not going to be very many contracts like that handed out, he might be more tempted to take it. Elliot Friedman reporting something that I think we could have probably figured out, but it does matter that it's reported out because the Pittsburgh Penguins, after 3 straight disappointments in the playoffs, Mike Sullivan may very well have been seen as being a problem and his job maybe being in danger. But Friedman reporting that Sullivan will be coaching the team in October. Of course, if they got off to a slow start, something else happens. Who knows if he's coaching them in November? Coaching can be that way in the NHL. But, Sullivan will be returning as coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, that's kind of something that makes total sense. So there was an article in The Athletic today, and I just want to throw out there, The Athletic is a great publication. And it's really, the articles on there are more long form than what you'll see on a lot of sports sites. And they're more in depth and thoughtful than a lot of the hot takes you'll see on some of the other flashier sports sites. So they have a really well researched and thought out article on which teams are best at drafting. And so I didn't put it all up here because no, I'm just going to encourage people, if you haven't read it yet, by all means do, because it's an interesting read. And the part that got me was where they were talking about best teams drafting outside the first round from 2005 till 2016. Keeping in mind, 2017 until now, it's a little too soon to grade how somebody's drafted, especially outside the first round. You really don't know. The guys who are drafted outside the first round very often are good players. They're just seen as they'll probably take a little bit longer. So you take them later. It's an odd thing with scouting that I've always wondered about. Like, well, wait a minute, if that guy has the same ceiling as this guy, do I care that he would take a year longer than this guy? Like, so if I miss out on one, why don't I draft the other? Oh, well, I want this guy because he's going to be ready sooner. Like, just anyways. So the best teams at drafting outside the first round, number 1, Tampa Bay, which will surprise no one. Tampa Bay is, and they're still doing it. We're still seeing guys jump into the lineup. It's like, I don't know who that, oh, okay, he's pretty good. Ross Colton being the most recent example of a guy who, he ends up being a pretty good player. He fits right in. And, maybe that whole idea of making sure your AHL team is playing the exact same game as your NHL team, so there's a seamless transition. Maybe Tampa Bay is one of the pioneers of that, because it really feels that way. The guys just step in, and they're playing the same style. You don't notice the rookies. They don't stand out as much. And they used to. There was a time in the NHL where, the AHL was not playing the same game as the NHL. And I mean, like, same systems, same setup. So the rookie would come in and he'd stick out like a sore thumb. He'd be like, man, he made a really boneheaded play there. But he's a rookie. He's still learning the system. Now they come in, they already know the system. So Tampa Bay has done very well with that. Carolina at number 2. Not really a surprise there. Tampa Bay won the Cup in 2020. Carolina looks like a team that could very well win a Cup. They could win it this year. They could win it over the next few years. They're a legit contender. So their drafting ability outside the first round has played a large role in that. The Rangers at number 3 makes total sense. The Rangers had a very, very good run in the mid-2010s, and a lot of that had to do with smart drafting outside the first round. and Anaheim at number 4. Anaheim, of course, had a very solid long run at the top or near the top, which is kind of colored a little bit by the fact that they win the Cup in 07 and they don't win another one after that. So, but generally their drafting was excellent. Number 27 is Colorado. And Avs fans will tell you this, that they're very good at getting those first-round draft picks, and they're good with free agency and trades. But the draft picks outside the first round have been an issue. Philadelphia at 28. This may very well be part of the reason why Philadelphia doesn't get that sustained success. Nice long runs, because they're, again, maybe drafting well in the first round. But outside the first round, it can be a bit of a misadventure. At 29 is Vancouver. Yes, that plays a direct role in Vancouver's issues they've had over the last while. It's gotten better under Benning, but it takes a while for that turnaround to take place. When you're looking at the draft table, it takes a while for that turnaround to really get going. They signed Podkolzin finally yesterday, and that's definitely important. They're signing other prospects as well. It takes a while for that to fully flesh itself out and to know what you've got. And then Edmonton's at 30. Edmonton's very good at those number 1, number 2 draft picks. They're very good at picking the right guys, but outside the first round, it can be an issue. So Edmonton 30th overall, and of course Vegas wasn't around back then to actually put them on the board. But yeah, Vegas so far, their drafting has been pretty good, and their development's been good. And I think this speaks both to the ability to draft the right guys, and it speaks to your development system. There are definitely players that development systems made them better, Tampa Bay, or a development system has let them down. And I think we've seen that with Edmonton. I know we've seen that with Vancouver as well. So there you go. Again, I highly recommend that article on The Athletic. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through and happen upon this video today, welcome and all of that. And hey, let me know your thoughts, your winners for tonight, all of that in the comment section below. And yeah, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. I'll talk to you again soon.